A ragged old man enters a high-end cafe, his hands trembling as he reaches for a few crumpled bills. But when the staff humiliates him and kicks him out, they make one fatal mistake. They have no idea who he really is. What happens next will change everything. It was a cold, rainy evening when an old man stepped inside the busy cafe. His clothes were soaked, his hands trembling, and his eyes filled with exhaustion. The warmth of the cafe should have comforted him, but instead all he felt was the weight of judgment. The room fell silent. Customers exchanged uneasy glances, and employees whispered amongst themselves. From behind the counter, the shift manager, Lena, wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Oh, great," she muttered under her breath. "Another beggar." The old man hesitated before walking to the counter. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a few crumpled dollar bills. "Can I please have a cup of coffee?" he asked, his voice weak. The young cashier, Daniel, looked at the man, noticing his frail fingers and the slight shake in his hands. He didn't just see a customer, he saw a man in need. "Are you okay, sir?" Daniel asked softly. "Do you need something to eat?" Lena scoffed, rolling her eyes. "If he can't pay, he can't stay," she snapped, slamming a coffee cup on the counter. "We're running a business, not a charity." A few customers chuckled. Some nodded in agreement. Daniel hesitated, then reached into his own pocket, pulling out a $5 bill. "His coffee is on me," he said, his voice firm. The cafe fell silent. Lena folded her arms, narrowing her eyes. "You want to waste your paycheck on some random bum? Fine, but don't expect to keep your job for long." Daniel ignored her. Instead, he poured the coffee and placed it in front of the old man. The man took the cup with shaky hands, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me." Daniel only smiled. And with that, the old man turned and walked back into the cold night. But what nobody knew was that the man they had just dismissed as a beggar was not who he seemed. The next day, the cafe was buzzing with its usual morning rush when something unexpected happened. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the store. The employees stared as the door opened, and a well-dressed man in a sharp three-piece suit stepped out. His presence commanded attention. Lena gasped, her face draining of color. "No way," she whispered, because standing before them, no longer in tattered clothes, was the same old man from last night. Except now he wasn't trembling, he wasn't weak, and he wasn't just any man. He was Mr. Whitmore, the billionaire CEO of the entire cafe chain. The employees were gathered for an emergency meeting. The tension in the air was suffocating. Mr. Whitmore stood before them, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "Last night," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I came into this cafe looking for kindness, and what I found shocked me." The room was silent. No one dared to move. "Most of you turned your backs on me," he continued. "Some of you laughed. One of you insulted me." Lena swallowed hard. Sweat formed on her brow. Then Mr. Whitmore turned to Daniel. "But one person treated me with dignity." Daniel's heart pounded. "You, Daniel," Mr. Whitmore said, stepping forward, "showed kindness when no one else did. And for that," he reached into his pocket and pulled out a document. "Congratulations," he said with a smile. "You're being promoted to regional manager, effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Daniel's jaw dropped. "Whoa, what? Regional manager?" he stammered. Mr. Whitmore nodded. "Your kindness proved you have the heart of a leader." Just as the shock was settling in, Mr. Whitmore turned, his eyes locking onto Lena. Her hands trembled. "And you," he said coldly. Lena took a step back. "You're fired." A heavy silence fell. Lena's lips trembled. "Wait, sir? I didn't know it was you." Mr. Whitmore's expression darkened. "That's the problem, Lena. You shouldn't treat people with kindness because of who they are. You should treat people with kindness because it's the right thing to do." Security stepped in. As Lena stormed out of the cafe, the staff watched in stunned silence. Daniel was still in disbelief when Mr. Whitmore walked up to him once more. "I have one more question for you, Daniel," he said, his voice softer now. Daniel straightened. "Yes, sir?" Mr. Whitmore gestured to the Rolls-Royce outside. How would you like to work directly for me? Daniel's breath caught in his throat. What? He choked out. I need more people like you, Mr. Whitmore said. Loyal, kind, people who believe in doing what's right. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Yesterday he was just a cashier. Today his entire life had changed. As he stepped into the luxury car, he glanced back at the cafe one last time. A place that once felt like a dead-end job had now led him to the opportunity of a lifetime. In the end, the cafe staff learned a life-changing lesson. Kindness isn't about who's watching, it's about who you truly are. Daniel's small act of compassion turned into the opportunity of a lifetime, while Lena's cruelty cost her everything. Because in this world, you never know when the nobody standing before you might just be the person who holds your future in their hands.